Welcome to the Voice of College Football, Colorado Live. I'm your host, John Robinson IV. You can all call me JayRob. Make sure you leave a subscribe or hit the subscribe button, might I say. Hit the like button, leave a comment. And pretty much, if you know me from the other show, I cover for the Voice of College Football on 365. So we cover round-the-clock coverage. But I also am going to be covering the Colorado Buffaloes here. So follow me on X, follow me on Instagram, wherever you are watching this live at currently. But this is our first episode of the season. I'm really excited to be covering the Colorado Buffaloes. Obviously, took the world by storm the last 2 years. They're probably the biggest brand in football in terms of clicks, social media influence, definitely due to Deion Sanders and his influence and really what it meant to that program with him coming to Boulder, Colorado. I think obviously with this being the first time we are talking about the University of Colorado, I do think there are some things to know, at least where I stand about the program, just because there has been a lot of conversation about this program. There's a lot of opinions about this program. And as you can see with a lot of the popping circumstance that is coming around Shedeur, Sanders, Travis Hunter, Deion, there are a lot of things that you kind of are on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence. I will say, I love Deion's move to Colorado. I thought the decision to bring Shedeur and Travis with him and build up that program was phenomenal. This was a team that was near the bottom of college football 2 years ago and have completely transformed thanks to Deion's influence, a little help from the transfer portal and NIL. But overall, this is one of the premier programs in football now. If you're looking at any 4 to 5 star recruit in the country, whether it be through the transfer portal or in high school, Colorado is usually in their mix of schools just because you know the level of attention you're going to get. I think there is going to be a pace where Colorado football can be a legitimate power under Deion Sanders, especially with the success of the Shedeur and Travis Hunter and guys like Jimmy Horn in the NFL. I think seeing those guys prosper in the NFL will allow you to look at, for young recruits, to look at Colorado as a legitimate landing space for them to not only develop, but be premier players in the NFL. And I think the thing that is great about Colorado, where the resources there are different from other programs around the country, is Deion's influence brings in other Hall of Fame pro-level coaches. I think there is a level of advantage for University of Colorado when you're bringing in guys like Warren Sapp, Pat Schumer, Marshall Faulk, all this football knowledge in one building. And I know a lot of people say guys like that were once in a generation or big-time athletes, and it's hard for players at that level to coach. But Warren Sapp has told you, him going back to coaching was like revitalized him as just his love for the game. I think the same thing with Marshall Faulk. When you're seeing something being built that special, I think a lot of these guys see themselves in these players and find this opportunity to go out there and not only mentor, but really kind of fulfill maybe a bit of a void that they can't get post their playing years. I think as long as this program continues to bring in these high-level recruits, they're going to be a player for a long time. And I know there's going to be a lot of conversations about Deion moving on to other programs, but he just signed a massive extension at the University of Colorado. I think his buyout would be ridiculous for a program to go and get him. And it feels like he's trying to build his own dynasty. I think people fail to realize Deion Sanders in Buffalo, Colorado, turning that program around, you could turn it into a real staple. I think the market as it is in that area is already high, obviously with the Denver Nuggets being champions, the brand being the Broncos. So with all of those things, along with Colorado, I mean, business is essentially booming in Colorado, in Boulder, Colorado, not to quote AB or anything like that. But it seems like Colorado as a landing space has a really high future. Along with that, I also stand on the fact I think Deion Sanders is a good coach. I think the things that he values as a head coach makes him one of the premier guys in college football. For a guy to go from an HBCU to a Power 5 and transform the program to a point where they're 9 wins, 10 wins when they didn't have any, it says a lot about his ability to not only coach players but deal with some of the situations around him. I don't think Deion got enough credit for how he managed that bad offensive line a few years back, along with the lack of a run game. There were a lot of moving pieces, and you could probably argue, well, you had Travis Hunter, you have Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, those are really talented players, but football is 11 on 11. There's one – if somebody doesn't do their 1/11th, it can ruin an entire play. I think people fail to remember, if you go back to a lot of football games, throughout history. I think you can remember Super Bowls, playoff games. You usually find about one or two plays where you go back and say that won or lost us the game. Most losses in close football games, they really come down to 4 plays, 5 plays max that really change the tide of a matchup. And so when I look at what Deion has been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time, I'm excited to see what this program is going to become. And the biggest reason why I know and really have a good hunch that the program is on a good track going forward is Deion does have a high standard for himself. I think and he projects that onto his players. The simple things like no earrings in the meeting rooms, no cell phones in the meeting rooms. I think in today's generation of football, the phones, social media, a lot of it, a lot of it is a different era. And for some coaches, they don't tolerate it. But I think it's important for kids to not feel like, especially at this level, that they can go into your meeting rooms, flip-flops, no shirt on, because there is also a level of professionalism as you're going to carry yourselves in your football buildings around your coaches and things like that. And so when we're in a meeting room discussing football, there has to be a level of professionalism. And I think Deion enforcing that is a big deal, and it's important. I remember during his time being covered at Jackson State, Shiloh, his son, came late to a meeting, and Deion kicked him out in front of everybody. That's a big deal. Things like that show a level of not only accountability, but it shows that everybody across the board is equal. And not only is everybody equal, we're going to be held to a higher standard. And I think programs that are held to a high standard are the ones that succeed. You can look back at it now. Why has Nick Saban been able to win all these championships? Why has Ohio State been one of the premier programs in college football? Even Clemson, all these programs that are top-notch, there is a standard in which they carry themselves. And because of that said standard, there is why they have a certain level of success. Now, going into this season, 2025 season preview here, I'm really excited. This is my hottest take about the University of Colorado, actually, going into this season, is despite them losing Travis Hunter, despite them not having, excuse me, the same level of maybe a Jimmy Horn and all those guys not being there, no Shiloh Sanders, no Silman Craig, no LeJontay Wester, I truly feel like the level of talent across the board is better now than what it was when Shedeur and Travis was there, because the recruiting has gotten better. I don't think people realize they've had multiple recruiting classes now. Deion has been able to build a roster, build depth. It's not easy to just flip a program. You flip a program, it does take a few years to get to a point where you have a bunch of players at multiple positions who are studs. You're looking for dogs everywhere. And so Deion has done a great job of utilizing the transfer portal. With the recent success he's had, you see recruits are flocking to Colorado. And so not only are you able to show recruits, you get not only a good education, you'll be surrounded by coaches with NFL level experience, and not just any type of NFL experience, guys who are successful in the league. And you'll be able to have the biggest spotlight. That spotlight attracts NIL, gets you on TV. It's good for the NFL to be able to see you in these big spotlights. And so now that he has these recruits on the offensive line, I think they're going to have a lot of success this year. Let's go over their schedule. Let's get this up for us real quick. Get their football schedule this year. They got some good games. And so when I look over their schedule, they start out the year at Georgia Tech. I think that's week 0 of the college football season. They play them on August 29th. They play a good Georgia Tech team. I like Haynes King. I think they get that win. Then you look at Delaware, which they should be a win. Then they play Houston, Wyoming, BYU. Now, I think they'll beat Houston. I think the big test of this stretch will be BYU. BYU is going to be a player. They have a lot of money at NIL, as you can see. It's clear that BYU has fully committed to being a legitimate player in major Power 5 football. And so that's one of the games I'm going to circle, because that's a game that not only do I think if they win that game, it can swing the season for them, but I think if they lose the game down the stretch, it could have implications in terms of like the Big 12 Big 12 championship picture. Now they go to TCU, which should be another win. Iowa State, good football program. Think they can get the win there. Utah will throw it up in the air. Utah's a really good quarterback. I'm excited to see what he is. Dual threat guy. Got to see him in big time football, but that could be a game that you circle. I think they run through Arizona, run through West Virginia, and then on the back half of the year, they play Arizona State and they play Kansas State. I love that they got Arizona State at home. If they got Arizona State in Tempe, I might be leaning more towards Arizona State in this game. I do feel like with them playing Arizona State at home, late game, especially beat BYU, this game right there could really be not only a momentum swing for the program and really vaulting them into maybe a different stratosphere than we thought, but I think it'll be good for their playoff push. Essentially now with straight seeding, and I said this on the other channel on 365, the straight seeding, I'm not really the biggest fan of it, to be honest. Due to the straight seeding, it does allow, it takes away some of the parity because I did enjoy the fact that conference winners, excuse me, especially amongst the Power Four, almost got like an auto bid, kind of like how you punch your ticket in March Madness. And then the teams with one win in the same conference would also get the nod, i.e., example like an SMU or an Indiana. And a lot of people were mad about Indiana getting in. You have hindsight. Their schedule is a lot better than people gave it credit for when you look down some of the teams on there. With straight seeding, the Big 12, I think, when I look at the ACC, the Big 10, and the SEC, I feel like the little brother of the group in some ways is the Big 12. And that's due to Oklahoma leaving and removing themselves going to the SEC and Texas doing the same thing. I think those are big moves, big power moves from those programs as well. But I think when you look at the Big 12, there is a level of little brother-esque. And so I am worried with the new straight seeding format, there might only be room for one Big 12 team in the format, because I'm almost certain that with straight seeding now, the SEC and the Big 12 are guaranteed two teams, and one of them is getting a third one. And so next on the list, you got the ACC, who I know is also going to get an automatic two teams. The ACC, Big 10, and SEC are automatically getting two teams every playoff. You also have to account for Notre Dame, because Notre Dame doesn't have a schedule. I think Notre Dame not having a schedule, for all full disclaimer, and this is not a Colorado show, a Notre Dame show, should be talking about Colorado, but just to give you some context, they're always going to get into the playoffs. As long as they win, as long as their schedule is competitive and they lose one game, 2 games max, competitive schedule, they're going to get into the playoffs because there's no metric to them playing the conference games. So, they're always going to be in that 5 to 12 seed in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if I think it's fair. Do I think it's time for them to look into getting into a conference? For sure, but that's a conversation for another day. But with all that being said, you got to look at your mid-major winners, because there's going to be a big-time big major that's going to get in. I am curious to see how the committee is going to judge the Pac-12. Is the Pac-12 going to be considered Power 5, or is it just a name? You know what I'm saying? Because that used to be a Power 5 conference, but obviously the way it's been retooled and rebuilt, I don't know if it's going to have that same level of a nod from the college football committee. So for a Colorado Buffalo team trying to make its first college football playoffs, it's going to be imperative that the Kansas State games, the Kansas State games and the Arizona State games of the world, those games, you have to win them, because if you don't, not only will they look at your schedule and say you don't have the signature wins, because I don't think Georgia Tech is going to be a massive player in the ACC. So I don't think over time that win is going to carry much weight when the committee looks at their schedule. So because of that, I think the end of the season for the Colorado Buffaloes is the most important. They really should try to, the best situation for them to have one loss going into Arizona State and Kansas State and coming out 2-0 in that back-to-back, because it'll definitely haul them into national contention. But I will say, I do think of all the teams in the country, Colorado, if they go to the Big 12 championship as a 2-loss team, as a 1-loss team, and lose, making them a 2-loss team, I think the committee would rank them in that straight 12 just due to the amount of attention that they will get. Don't let the committee fool you guys. They want ratings. They want big programs. They want big fan bases. They want people to show out. And so if the Colorado Buffaloes give them an inch, put them in, they're going to take the mile. I definitely feel that for sure. So the biggest conversation when it comes to Colorado, the University of Colorado, for me, is easily the quarterback situation at the university, just due to the fact that there's been so much conversation about Caden Salter and Juju Lewis. I'm going to come out and say, rip the Band-Aid off. I think Caden Salter should easily be the starter. I don't think there should be a level of debate about it. Juju Lewis, I know there's the picture of Shedeur handing the keys to the kingdom, and he's going to have the kingdom. I think Juju Lewis is a phenomenal quarterback. I think he's going to be a great prospect. I think he's going to be a first-round pick. He's a potential first-round pick in his future. But having the ability to sit behind a guy like Caden Salter, one who's definitely a different style, he's a far better runner than Juju Lewis, and is still a good passer, in my opinion. I remember the year they played Oregon when he was at the University of Liberty. That year he looked phenomenal. I think the talent that he had on his roster went down significantly in his second year at Liberty, and that's why I didn't have the same level of success. But I still think he's one of the premier quarterbacks in college football. And for Juju Lewis to be able to sit and learn from him in that situation, I think he's going to do wonders for his growth and his progression. I'm not one of those guys that feels like when you have a five-star quarterback, they have to be thrusted into the spotlight immediately. For example, this might be a hot take. I don't think Trevor Lawrence, for example, had to be the starter over Kelly Bryant. I think Kelly Bryant could have easily had the same level of season, and Trevor Lawrence could have learned a lot under that situation. Now, obviously, they won a national championship. Trevor was a good player, not taking anything against him. But my point is to say, if you look at an Arch Manning, for example, I think him sitting behind Quinn Ewers is going to do him wonders. Having the chance to take a lot of mental reps and watching a veteran player who's played a lot of snaps do it, you gain a lot from it. And I think for Juju Lewis, he'll definitely be QB2. If Caden gets hurt, you'll definitely insert him as the number 2 guy. But watching a successful college football player take a big stage on and be dynamic for this Colorado Buffalo offense, I think it's going to be great. I think there's going to be a lot of conversations about the Caden Salter, Omarion Miller connection this season. That is going to be the biggest thing to look out for. And so I know there's those fans out there because of every highlight that you see of Juju Lewis. And he's the more famous player for sure. I mean, more of the household name, more people talk about him. He is like that super duper freshman. But despite that, I do think Caden Salter is just a little bit more polished right now. I think in terms of his leadership, command, I think that's going to matter a bit more. And the one thing I do like about him compared to when Shedeur was at quarterback, and I do think Shedeur was the better quarterback overall, but with the offensive line, it's still kind of a guessing game. We don't know what this Colorado Buffalo offensive line is going to look like. And because of that, when I look at Caden Salter, he can gash you. And what I mean by that is right through the defense, he can take a running lane and hit his head on the goalpost, tune up the band, it's 6, touchdown. I mean, he's a dynamic runner. I think he's an underrated passer, wasn't given a lot of credit for how good he is as a passer. I think that had a lot to do with what happened at Liberty and them, not being as great as they were a season ago. And because of that, there was some drawback from his numbers, but it's hard to carry a team in college football. I want everybody to know that it is hard to will a college football team, especially one in a mid-major conference. It's not easy. And so to ask a guy to do that without the level of resources around him, it's difficult. And so I think he did the best with the resources that he had. But now with Big Jordan C and protecting his blind side, I think it'll be a lot better here in Colorado. Just a bit curious about what the interior offensive line will look like. But I do think because he's such a dynamic runner, he'll not only take some of that stress off of his offensive line, but he'll cause a lot of problems for a lot of defenses. I truly think people are underestimating how good this program could potentially be this season, especially with the amount of transfers they had and with the way the quarterback situation rolled out for them. I think the most underrated commitment of the transfer portal offseason has been Caden Salter to the University of Colorado, because due to maybe a down year, I think a lot of people sleep on what his ability is. Because truthfully, if he had back-to-back productive seasons at Liberty, he probably wouldn't even be at Colorado. He'd probably be in the NFL. And I look at a lot like Cam Ward's situation in terms of maximizing your talent on a bigger stage. It's going from Washington State to Miami and flourishing in the system in his 1 year there. Kaden Salter has the opportunity to almost replicate that if he's able to dominate in Boulder, Colorado. Now, before we start to wrap up the show, I do want to talk about Shedeur and Travis Hunter. Obviously, they've been pillars for the Colorado Buffaloes program. This will probably be the first and last time I talk about their NFL careers on this platform. And so I know there's going to be a lot of those people who are initially watching. Shout out to the 35 people watching this as well. Shout out to y'all being in the very first episode of the Voice of College Football, Colorado Buffaloes Live with your host, JayRob. Again, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment, anything like that. You know, we appreciate it. Ask around for anything you want to talk about. Don't hesitate. If there's a question you might have, your comments, we'll have them up here on the show. I definitely will have my productive skills going, a little B-roll, a few P&Gs. Don't worry, Chad, we'll be cooking all season long. But anyway, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. We'll start with Travis Hunter. I'm excited for him. I think the Jags going up, getting rid of next year's pick to go get him was phenomenal. I believe him and BTJ will be a premier duo in Jacksonville. This is going to be a great year for Trevor Lawrence just because he has so much at his disposal. It is going to be a headache for defensive coordinators to go out there and figure out ways to stop BTJ and Travis Hunter. I mean, that combination is absolutely electric. I had the opportunity to cover the Pro Bowl this year, had the opportunity to see BTJ live and direct. I mean, he's every bit of 6'4", damn near 6'5". I mean, huge catch radius. He had a touchdown in the Pro Bowl flag football game, but you saw how dominant he was this season. I mean, he's an absolutely electric receiver. I think he has all the God-given talent to be a top 5 guy. And Travis Hunter has all the ability to be the number 1, number 2 playmaker in all the NFL. You put the ball in his hands and let him make magic. And when you have that 1-2 punch along with along with Trevor Lawrence, it is going to be fireworks in Jacksonville. And I'm excited for his future. I think he's done everything right up to this point. He's a humble kid. He works hard. He's a once-in-a-generation athlete, the Shohei Ohtani of football. And so he's going to have a lot of success at the next level. And this is just the beginning of a once-in-a-generation athlete. And now on to Shedeur Sanders. I know everybody had a lot of opinions about his draft night. I'm sure I do for sure. I want to go out and flat out say it. I definitely think that NFL teams just decided they didn't want any part of Deion Sanders and the Sanders family and the media that comes with it. Because some of the stories that came out, I did find some of them hard to believe. Shedeur Sanders wearing his headphones into a meeting, not really being prepared. And the only reason why I find it confusing is just because of the level of standards that Deion puts on his players from the jump. I mean, he cares about grades. Colorado had their first cumulative 3.0 as in school history on the football team. So I just think when you carry your team with such a level of a standard, I can't figure out for the life of me why his son, who's been around him his entire life, would go into a meeting with his headphones on and be dejected and pretty much not care about the teams that are interviewing him. Who knows? I wasn't there. I can't tell the truth or the proof. There has to be somebody to come out who was directly in those meetings to say it, but we know that's not going to happen. However, from everything I've seen, Shedeur Sanders hasn't been arrested, hasn't been caught up in any trouble. I think the biggest controversy I've seen is the amount of cash he had after he got drafted at a party it was gifted to him, or, people having, dissertations on the internet about how massive his chain is. But outside of that, there isn't much, scrutiny that's surrounding his name. I just think that people have a lot of opinions about his father, and due to people having a lot of opinions about his father, they have a lot of opinions about him. And sometimes, Deion has made statements, surrounding his draft process. And in some ways, that probably rubbed people the wrong way, and they took it out on his son. Shedeur Sanders going 5th round to the Cleveland Browns didn't mean to rhyme there at all. I mean, it's a travesty. He's the most talented 5th round pick to ever be drafted in the 5th round. If there's a better 5th round pick that's more talented than Shedeur, leave it in the comments. We could debate it later. I mean, he's a 1st round talent. From everything I've seen from how he's performed in OTAs, I mean, the video footage speaks for itself. I mean, the ball flies out of his hands. His anticipatory skills were among the best. I mean, when I was coming out, I mocked him. His pro comp for me was Joe Burrow, Geno Smith hybrid. I think his anticipatory skills, along with his ability to take hits in the pocket and make throws, I mean, it's second to none. I think he was the best in his class at that. There's a reason why he's legitimately the most accurate quarterback in college football history. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. Go look that number up. And so I don't think you do that by accident. He was so clutch for that team down the stretch with the lack of talent. And I think the biggest and the saddest part about these NFL teams who did not draft him is when you're a rookie in the NFL, the biggest thing with that transition from college to the pros is you're probably going to have an awful offensive line. You're going to have to play in a lot of chaos. There's going to be essentially a bunch of 300-pound, 6'4" guys who can run 4-4 running at you, and you're going to have to make a throw into a window with somebody barreling down your face. And he was by far the best in the country at doing that, because for 2 years we have watched him have a below average offensive line and still manage to put up exceptional numbers. That's not by accident. A lot of people cannot stand in the pocket and just take a hit. Ask Carson Beck how things got for him at the University of Georgia when things start to break down around him. There's a reason why he's at Miami right now. He's going to have a better offensive line there. But everybody can't just sit down in the belly of the beast and take a hit. And I thought that was the most translatable thing, not only with his ability to be accurate, but his ability to take throws make throws within a pocket in chaos. And for teams to look away from that and not select him was a travesty. But I also think teams weren't willing to give him the $30-40 million contract that comes with being a first-round pick. And so you draft him in the 5th round because it allows you to move off of him if you can't deal with the circus of it all. And I think now you see a lot of backtracking because these clips are coming out and you're seeing all of these snippets of him making the same throws we've seen him do for his entire career. And the conversation now is that he has an opportunity to start. And I think the biggest foreshadowing of that is, chat, don't let the world fool you. In no world has a head coach ever had a 3rd round, 5th round quarterback, a guy that they brought in Kenny Pickett, and another guy in Joe Flacco that they brought in, and they're going to come out and say it's an open quarterback competition. Not for a 5th and 3rd round draft pick. It would be said that Joe Flacco's the starter. We're going to develop the young quarterbacks, see maybe Kenny Pickett, but there wouldn't be an open conversation that is a 4-way quarterback battle for QB1. Now, do I think Shedeur will start week 1? I don't. I think it'll be like game 3 of the season. I think it'll be soon. I think the fan base is going to get quickly agitated if the quarterback play isn't up to par to start. I think what people are failing to realize is this is no slight to Dylan Gabriel, but he's not a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. He was better coming out of college. He's better now. I mean, his frame is bigger. I think he throws a better ball. Listen, he's not a Kyler Murray level athlete, Russell Wilson level athlete at 5'10", and I would say he's closer to 5'10", shorter than Kyler Murray than he is to what Russell Wilson is, and he doesn't have the frame. I think he'll be a great backup, 3rd string guy, good locker room guy, but I don't think he's a guy that you try to build a franchise around. When you look at a guy like Shedeur Sanders, you have elite accuracy, elite arm talent, elite pocket presence, the ability to dissect throws. This is not a quarterback that has the highest accuracy, highest throwing percentage in the country by accident. You can't be an idiot, can't understand X's and O's and be able to put those type of numbers up. And so I think it was a travesty that he dropped so low, but I also think the Browns might have found their guy. And so we're going to look at this conversation from now, and I think it'll be a lot different. And the biggest thing I can tell you, if you're into trading cards, find that Shedeur Sanders rookie card if you can, because it probably will be worth a lot of money in a few years. But that is my soapbox speech on those 2 players. I think it'll be great to see them in the league. We'll maybe highlight them here and there, but we're probably ain't going to talk too much about them in their careers unless it's something massive and we got to just throw it into the ether because they were the pillars to this conversation. The fact that we even have a Colorado Live is because of that level of impact and how big the program is. But with that being said, I'm JayRob. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a comment, leave a like, leave a subscribe, wherever you're watching this on X, Instagram, YouTube. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit nasally. The weather's changing. It's getting to me. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you have a great and safe